Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something that is fundamentally simple, yet absolutely transformative for your everyday health. We're talking about gravity. Think about it. We spend about a third of our entire lives lying completely flat in bed. But some wild new research into our brain chemistry is starting to suggest that sleeping flat might actually be working against us. So this brings us to a really fascinating central question. Can gravity actually cure bad sleep? I know, it sounds a little out there, right? But sleep researchers have noticed this bizarre trend in nature. Both wild animals and domestic livestock naturally choose to sleep on the ground, with their heads positioned slightly uphill. They literally seek out an incline. It really makes you wonder, what do they instinctively know about gravity and their bodies that we've totally forgotten by engineering these perfectly flat beds? All right, here is our roadmap for today. We're going to kick things off with sleep, gravity, and elevation. Then we'll explain the glymphatic system, look at how it's flushing out brain diseases, tackle snoring and venous insufficiency, and finally, we'll break down the practical stuff with wedges versus adjustable bases. Okay, let's jump right into section 1, sleep, gravity, and elevation. To really get why this matters, we first need to take a step back and look at the massive scale of the sleep problems we're all dealing with today. Because when we lie completely flat, we are actually taking the powerful force of gravity and letting it work against our own anatomy. Just look at this staggering number, 90 million. That's how many American adults are currently dealing with snoring. That is 90 million people suffering through restless nights, interrupted breathing, and, let's be real, driving their exhausted partners crazy. And the main culprit here? Well, when you lie completely flat, gravity just pulls straight down on the soft tissues in your throat. They collapse, they narrow your airway, and you get that rattling vibration we all know too well. We are literally letting gravity choke our breathing. But what if we flipped the script and used gravity to our advantage? About 20 years ago, a mechanical engineer named Andrew K. Fletcher came up with this concept called inclined bed therapy, or IBT. He was actually studying how sap circulates up and down trees, and he realized that if you raise the head of your bed just 6 inches, which creates a super mild 5-degree head-to-toe incline, you leverage gravity to naturally improve the fluid circulation in your entire body. It is wild to think that a tiny 5-degree shift can completely assist the natural head-to-toe flow and drainage of your bodily fluids. Moving right along to section 2, the glymphatic system explained. To really grasp why that fluid drainage is absolutely crucial, we have to zoom way deep inside your brain. We're going to uncover the incredible biological machinery that elevation and gravity help trigger while you're fast asleep. So meet the glymphatic system. You can basically think of this as your brain's built-in dishwasher. Throughout the day, as your neurons are firing and you're thinking and working, they produce metabolic waste. And if this waste builds up, it becomes highly toxic. Now, here's where it gets really cool. When you go to sleep, your brain cells actually shrink down just a little bit, creating extra space for fluid to flow through. Then, the glymphatic system kicks on and runs a nightly wash cycle, sweeping fluid right through the brain tissue to scrub out all those toxic metabolic byproducts. The energen that actually powers this dishwasher is a microscopic water channel protein called aquaporin-4, or AQP4. It essentially creates the chemical force that drives the fluid through your brain tissue. And the crucial point here is, if these proteins get damaged and lose their polarized distribution around your blood vessels, your brain's waste clearance rate just plummets massively. Let's map out exactly how this nightly sweep works. First up, cerebrospinal fluid cruises along the outside of your brain's arteries. Driven by those AQP4 proteins, it pushes deep into the brain tissue, mixing it up with the fluid surrounding your cells. Finally, this fluid, which is now completely loaded up with toxic waste, drains out along your veins, leaves the brain, and enters the bloodstream to be disposed of. And here's the kicker. Gravity and elevation drastically speed up and aid this downward drainage. Which brings us to section 3, flushing out brain diseases. Because this brilliantly illustrates a really terrifying question. What actually happens when this nightly drainage system fails and those toxins are just left sitting in your brain? Well, the consequences are incredibly severe. When that clearance rate drops, neurotoxic proteins just accumulate. Beta amyloid plaques start building up, which we know is a major hallmark of Alzheimer's disease. Alpha-synuclein deposits gather, and that's linked to Parkinson's disease. Tau proteins accumulate, driving chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE. We're talking about severe, life-altering neurodegenerative conditions here. And it's pretty staggering to juxtapose those massive health crises against the surprisingly simple preventative act of just elevating your sleep angle so your brain drains properly. Okay, let's step back from the microscopic cells of the deep brain for section 4, snoring and venous insufficiency. Let's look at the rest of the body to see how different physical issues require distinctly different angles of elevation. Because it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all equation, right? It's all about directional needs. If you're trying to drain your brain or prevent acid reflux or keep those throat tissues from collapsing, you absolutely have to elevate your head and upper body. But if you are dealing with blood pooling down in your lower extremities, you actually need the exact opposite. You need to elevate your legs to combat gravity pulling that blood down. And that leads us right into venous insufficiency. Basically, this is a condition where the veins in your legs are really struggling to send blood all the way back up to your heart. It causes swelling, pain, and is heavily linked to restless leg syndrome, which if you've ever had it, you know it can be absolutely agonizing and completely ruin your sleep. The simple solution here is to elevate your legs above the level of your heart for maybe 15 to 30 minutes before bed. This just gives your veins a much-needed break, promotes that blood return to the heart, reduces the swelling, and drastically improves your comfort right before you fall asleep. Now, what's super interesting here is how very specific angles unlock very specific health benefits. If you just want the general fluid flow and glymphatic benefits of incline bed therapy, that mild 5-degree incline is your sweet spot. But if you're actively trying to shut down snoring and keep your airway open, you need to elevate the upper body between 20 and 30 degrees. And for the heavy stuff like severe sleep apnea or aggressive acid reflux, sleep experts actually recommend a much steeper 30 to 45-degree angle to make absolutely sure stomach acid stays down and your airways stay totally unblocked. Let's move to our final part, section 5, wedges versus adjustable bases. Let's talk about how you can actually bring these angles into your own bedroom. It basically boils down to two main consumer products. Let's do a really quick, practical breakdown of your two options here. We've got wedge pillows on one side and adjustable bases on the other. They both rely on the exact same scientific principle, using gravity to clear the airway and aid circulation. But their approach and definitely their price tags are quite different. First up, the wedge pillow. Honestly, this is a fantastic, super accessible starting point for anyone. Costing anywhere from $30 to $150, it requires zero setup. You literally just toss it on your bed. It gives you a fixed 30 to 45-degree incline, which is incredibly effective at stopping airway collapse and acid reflux. Plus, because it's portable, you can toss your anti-snoring solution in the car when you travel. The one downside? Well, it's a pillow. It sits on top of your mattress, meaning there's a chance you might wake up having slid halfway down the bed during the night. Then, on the other end of the spectrum, we have the adjustable base. This is a premium, permanent investment, usually starting around $800 and going up from there. But the benefits are pretty comprehensive. You get this precise, motorized customization from 10 all the way up to 70 degrees. So you can elevate your head to 30 degrees for snoring while simultaneously raising your legs to a zero-gravity position. And let me tell you, that zero-gravity posture is incredible for relieving venous insufficiency and lower back pain. Best of all, it gives you consistent all-night support. The whole bed physically curves, so you aren't going to slide down or shift out of alignment. And that wraps up our explainer for today. We've covered a lot of ground, seeing how just a simple shift in angle can optimize brain drainage, stop snoring, ease restless legs, and maybe even defend against cognitive decline. So I want to leave you with this final thought. As you get into bed tonight, just consider the physics of your posture. Is your perfectly flat bed actually holding back your body's natural gravity-driven healing power? It is definitely something to sleep on. Thanks so much for joining me, and keep questioning the science behind your everyday life.